Substack, the platform, has come under fire recently. It's been accused by some critics of being, quote, a haven for extremists. But Substack is fighting back against these claims.
Vice President of the platform, Lulu Cheng Meservey, tweeted, "We keep seeing false claims about Substack that seem designed to mislead. Here's just one recent example, which the outlet refuses to correct. We believe the best way to fight misinformation is through open debate, so here are the facts." She joins us now to discuss the attacks waged against Substack. Welcome, Lulu.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
I gotta say, it sometimes feels like when the mainstream media is having conversations about these new media platforms, it almost feels like they want there to be a stigma on the platforms and for there to be a siloing of the kind of person that post on those kinds of platforms. Am I being overly paranoid here?
I'm pretty paranoid myself, so I can't speak to their motivations, but I can say that I've observed certain narratives taking hold. And so one of the narratives is there are things on here. We have the vague sense that there's things that people shouldn't be seeing or that we don't like. And one, I can guarantee you there's stuff that you don't like or I don't like. There should be things that anybody doesn't like. But two, the reason that narrative bothers us sometimes is it actually ignores and glosses over the accomplishments of people who don't fit that narrative. So there are amazing underrepresented minority voices on the platform doing incredible work, building out their media properties from scratch that just get ignored. Charlotte Clymer is one of my favorite Substack publishers who writes about LGBTQ issues, and she's a trans woman, a veteran, a former Politico. I mean, a very interesting character that totally gets glossed over because, not totally, but too often, because she doesn't fit the narrative. Parker Malloy is writing about politics, had a recent, very impactful piece about attacks during Pride. Emily Nunn is creating a media property writing only about salads, huge success on Substack. And because they don't fit this narrative that people are trying to push, they're not front and center as much as they should be. That's one thing that bothers me. And the second thing is something like extremist is in the eye of the beholder. So the screenshot that you guys showed, that's not news. That's one person's opinion. And it's, I think, fair game to debate an opinion.
Yeah, it seems like Substack has taken, and this is why I wanted to have you on, because you're in some ways a notable dissenter from a kind of new regime of, oh no, what are people saying on our platform? We have to really guardrail this. I'm talking about other social media companies, other places that get a lot of criticism as well from the mainstream media, from people who are very concerned about disinformation and extremism, and what if you just let people talk and discuss and be very dangerous? And you guys at Substack are taking a somewhat different view, it seems, and saying, we want there to be debates, we want there to be a genuine range of opinions. And yeah, like in the example you gave, I'm sure there are some, there probably aren't, I don't think there are very many, you don't hear high profile voices like saying, well, I disagree with Charlotte Clymer or Parker Malloy, so they don't, how dare they have Substacks? But you do hear that often, that kind of rhetoric coming from sometimes people in the mainstream media or other places, sometimes Democratic political figures, saying that, right, people who have dissenting views on maybe on COVID, maybe on something else, it's dangerous to allow them to speak openly about it. And so can you talk about Substack's philosophy about these things?
Yeah. There's no shortage of internet platforms that are very assiduous about censoring things that anyone might consider harmful or dangerous. Twitter has I think, a very well-staffed team that is actively kicking people off Twitter for saying the wrong thing. How's that working? Is Twitter a haven for productive debate? Is Twitter a haven of civility? Is that what's happened? Is Facebook? And so we've seen this thing tried. Substack doesn't take a position that everything you're going to see on the internet is good. We take a position that you get to decide what is bad, and then you don't have to look at it. We don't force it into your eyeballs. So a place like Twitter, now I'm picking on Twitter now, but a lot of places on the internet, they're hyperactive about trying to take down this and that. I call it censorship whack-a-mole. You just one by one taking things down, but it's not making the platform healthier because the incentives are wrong in the first place. You have a system where people are involuntarily shown, without their consent a lot of times, things that are going to make money for advertisers. and then they can't really opt out as easily. Substack is a place where by default you're opted out of everything. If you don't like salads, which I kind of don't, even though I love Emily Nunn. If you're an anti-salad person like me, you don't have to subscribe to the salad newsletter. I do because it's really good. But you don't have to subscribe to anything. Whereas other places on the internet, it's just coming at you and you have to block or mute it one by one. So that's a big difference where you can block anything that you consider harmful or extremist. You get to define what extremism is. Salad might be gastronomical extremism for you. Don't read it.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about Substack. In the early days of Substack, the rhetoric was very much about trying to criticize it on the basis of who was on there, right? And so there were a few high-profile folks who had left mainstream institutions, arguably because of cancel culture or self-cancellations or however you want to characterize it. They felt like they were no longer welcome or their views were no longer as welcome in the mainstream institutions, and they were able to eke out a living or way more than a living by moving to Substack. And people felt as though it was a way for them to avoid accountability. And that was a little bit of a tell, right? Because ultimately it was institutionalists saying, we don't like the fact that we're not able to impose our worldview on you because there are options for you to continue to write and to have a career and a livelihood outside of these traditional establishment institutions. And some of those people who left, I agree with ideologically. Some of the people who left, I don't agree with ideologically. But it was pretty obviously about establishment media's fretting that they can no longer have the same kind of control, monopoly over the market than they used to have. And I think we're seeing this now as other new platforms come up, whether we're talking about Rumble or what have you, where some of the earlier adopters are used to kind of vilify the entire thing. However, now everyone, it seems, is on Substack. All of the institutionalists are also on Substack. So someone might have a New York Times column, and they also privately have their own Substack column. And I wonder if you've seen a change over time in how Substack is covered as the mainstream actors who used to be pinning the anti-Substack screeds now have their own pages or columns at Substack.
Yeah, you pointed out something really important, Brianna, which is that Substack is a really good place for you to go and be in control for yourself. So you control what you're reading, what's being shown to you. You control as a writer what you want to say to your audience and how you want to manage your property. It's a very not good place to try to control things on behalf of other people, conversely. Over time, when so many people have started to just start their own Substacks, I think we have seen a change in people's appreciation for being in control. It's this sort of intangible thing where we can pitch it, but you don't feel the magic of it until you're actually doing it. We have so many writers that have said, Substack changed my life. And we were trying to tell them, it's going to change your life. It doesn't come across until they've actually experienced the amazing magic of being in control of their fate, of being able to write the things they think are most important, having a direct relationship with their audience where they can take that email list with them anywhere. It's a pension, it's financial security for them as a writer. And a lot of times they're making so much more than they were making before because now they don't have a ceiling. Right? They're not subject to a salary cap anymore. And that together is something that when you experience it, you get it. So people have seen religion, whereas it hasn't really come across as well when you just describe it, including a lot of people in what we're calling here mainstream media. So I think that there's become a lot more appreciation over time as people just start their own Substacks.
So Lou, I do have to ask though, is there a dark side to that where because the incentive is drawing in subscribers and getting, not clicks, but getting people to want a very kind of narrow, rather unchallenged view through your single avenue on your newsletter on the Substack, does that create perverse incentives for folks to kind of maybe double down in some perhaps potentially toxic, hateful, however you want to describe it, rhetoric? And then what is the line from your perspective, if any, of what your responsibility is as a platform host toward that kind of content? Is there a line?
Yeah, there's a line. We have a content policy. We have rules. There are things that are not allowed on Substack, including if you're going to dox someone or if you're saying, Lulu lives at this address, let's show up with baseball bats. send Bitcoin here and I'll send you sunglasses. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's not allowed on Substack, and we look for that, take it down when we see it, people report it. But I think it's worth noting again that the bar for us to intervene is higher here than it is elsewhere, because we do make that promise that you get to be in control. You have that direct consensual relationship between the writers and the readers. And for us to intervene in that and step between you guys while you're dancing at prom, that just takes a lot more than it would in other places. And so I would say that's done by design around the overall ethos of letting people be in control.
Well, Lulu, thank you so much for joining us. Substack is a kind of, like I said, different than a lot of these other platforms. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why that is. And not doing a commercial for Substack. I don't have one, et cetera. And we'd love to have on guests from some of these other social media companies that have different policies. So anyway, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Brianna. Appreciate you guys.
Well, tomorrow on Rising, Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky will be back in the chairs for Rising Friday, and you'll want to tune into that. And as for us, we will be back next week.
You need to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of this content. And if you're like me and you like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts in audio form.
And we don't know where Kim is at the moment. She's on her honeymoon, I believe, but she will be back at some point. So we're wishing her a good honeymoon, and we'll see you all shortly.
Bye-bye.